human-animal conflict is an extremely emotive and sensitive issue, but also something that calls for an urgent attention. Wayanad in Kerala is a beautiful district, but much before it became the constituency of Rahul Gandhi. It was and is known world over for its camping trails, thick forest cover, wildlife, and some very hospitable, warm people. Wayanad has seen massive protests over the last few days in the backdrop of 2 people dying due to attacks by elephants in a span of 1 week. And let me tell you, Wayanad has repeatedly witnessed such pain, tensions, and protests in Kerala. 98 people have died due to attacks by wild animals between 2022 and 23 across Kerala, according to data from the Forest Department. Of these, 27 were attacked by elephants. For this period, individual instances that we have corroborated show 7 elephants were killed across Kerala. Damage to crops has been extensive, particularly for farmers, small and medium-scale farmers who depend on it for their livelihoods. The figures are worrying. Now, amid all the protests that was unfolding in Wayanad, some of the things that they were demanding, among them was a sustainable solution to the human-animal conflict. The anger and pain seen in these visuals as they laid a wreath over a forest department vehicle, alleging their failure in protecting human lives, their cattle, their prized possessions. There's also another aspect to this, and it does not take away the anguish and agricultural destruction of locals, but brings in the right to live for the wild, the elephants and others. In 2010, Wayanad had 91.8 thousands of hectares of natural forest, extending over 75% of its land area. In 2022, it lost 68 hectares of natural forest, according to Global Forest Watch. This gives you a sense of how vast is Wayanad's forest and wildlife and the challenge before it. The district's forests are a part of a greater forested area comprising Nagarhole Tiger Reserve, Bandipur National Park, the BR Tiger Reserve in Karnataka, the Mudamalai Tiger Reserve, and the Satyamangalam Forest in Tamil Nadu. Wild animals, especially elephants and tigers, travel state borders in search for food. And there are corridors for their safe passage, which are meant for their right to passage. But then you have settlements, human settlements in close proximity. And that's where the challenge for a state like Kerala really is. Kerala is the 4th densely populated state in India and ranks a distant 21 when it comes to its land area. This itself marks the deep dichotomy, also the need for urgency, but does not absolve any political party that has ruled the state for a lack of sustained political will to find sustainable solutions to better coexistence. Animals, including elephants, have been hurt, attacked, or found dead. Let's look at this. Almost 395 kilometers of new roads came up in Kerala's forests in 12 years. Fragmentation of forests is a huge challenge in protecting wildlife corridors, but also necessary, in the words of officials, to ensure necessities reach the interiors, including the tribal settlements. There are studies that show the decreasing quality of habitats, change in plantation, cropping preferences, which consume huge amounts of water, straining forest resources at a time when climate change is wreaking havoc, with longer stretches of drier spells, lesser spells of rain, forcing locals and wild animals to face off more often in search of food and water, just about essentials. Mind you, Kerala Forest Department banned the cultivation of acacia and eucalyptus in forest tracts in 2018. The implementation, though, isn't that simple. We haven't been able to access statistics on how many animals, including tigers, elephants, have been injured, attacked in Wayanad over a decade or less. Though there have been individual instances that have been reported. But the other side does have representative figures. I'm being joined right now by MG Radhakrishnan, a senior journalist, Ajay Suri, wildlife expert, and wildlife filmmaker, Ravi Chellam, wildlife biologist. Thank you very much, all three of you, for joining us. Well, MG Radhakrishnan, let me just go straight to you. You've been in Kerala, you've been seeing all of this for decades, if I may say so. Not only seeing it, but covering it. As you see this unfold in yet another election, this is not the first time that this is coming to the fore in this manner in an election year. This is again a repeat. But again, it's not just about an election year. It's so much more deep-rooted. What are your top three takeaways or insights into what really is unfolding?
Well, it's extremely disturbing because the last 3 weeks alone, we have seen 3 people being trampled to death by wild elephants in Wayanad alone. And the biggest takeaway is that, the state as well as the society had to take some safeguards much in advance of what happened right now, because this has been growing for the last few years. The number of casualties has been going up. The crops being damaged, that has increased. So all these things have been, happening for some time. But I think the state, the authorities, the forest department, know the people of the entire state in general and in Wayanad in particular, not, sort of address themselves to address this issue. And so I think this is high time that now extremely important and significant steps have to be taken. Now, today, actually, the entire issue has assumed a completely different dimension with a person no less than Professor Madhav Gadgil himself has now come out saying that there is something seriously wrong with the 1972 Wildlife Act, and now he's saying that there should be a selective culling of animals, especially wild animals, and if wild animals are going to cause this kind of harm, I think the government, the authorities, and the forest department should be armed with new legislation, and if necessary, the animals have to be shot down. I'm not subscribing to his view completely, but since this is coming from somebody like Madhav Gadgil, this has completely given a new dimension to the whole issue.
Absolutely. MG Radhakrishnan, allow me to just go over to the other two panelists as well. There seems to be some network issue, and my team will try and restore that issue with you. Ajay Suri, how do you look at what's unfolding right now? It's not quite black and white. You really can't take sides here. Of course, there's a lot of politics happening, and it will happen. This is a high-profile constituency as well. But the heart of the issue here really is something that has been going on for a very long time. It's a right to live. It's a right to pursue livelihoods. It's a right to live in settlements. It's a right to live in corridors. And it's not really an issue that is only unfolding in Wayanad. There have been other areas and states and countries where similar issues have unfolded and have found solutions. Where do you see what's happening in Wayanad unfold?
Actually, you just pointed to the right thing. I don't want to focus only on Kerala, because as a filmmaker, as a wildlife journalist, I have traveled a lot. I've seen these man-animal conflicts happening in so many other places. Why just Kerala? I've seen people in dozens being trampled by elephants in the tea gardens of Assam. I've seen, right now, so many people are being killed on the periphery of Jim Corbett Tiger Reserve in Uttarakhand. And similar thing is happening in Kerala. I think it's a very tricky situation because there are two kinds of stakeholders. One is, of course, the animals, whose protection has been mandated by Wildlife Protection Act of 1972. And don't forget, thanks to this act, that today elephants, leopards, and tigers are actually thriving in India. And I believe that any attempt to dilute this act would boomerang against the wildlife conservation. But the second point is that the human beings who live around these natural reserves on the periphery, they are equally important stakeholders. So we have to have some kind of a holistic balance, between the two groups. So far, it's not happening because it's a recurring theme actually. Right now, what you're seeing is happening in Kerala. A few weeks ago, it was happening in Dudhwa. In fact, in a place called Pilibhit in Uttar Pradesh, tigers have been named as sugarcane tigers because they have been living in the sugarcane fields. They have actually come out of the forest area. And a lot of human beings are killed in Pilibhit by these sugarcane tigers. So what I'm trying to say is that this problem, is not just localized to Kerala. Of course, it's in the news now because Wayanad being such a politically important constituency. But if you see human beings are getting killed, even animals are getting killed. So this problem you can see all around you. And I believe that, you require some kind of a holistic solution to it.
All right. Ravi Chellam, if you could just come in here. There are two aspects to this. One, Kerala is a hugely dense population, has a hugely dense population. And I would like to get MG Radhakrishnan on this as well. But first, Ravi Chellam. Kerala has this hugely dense population with extremely less land area. You have settlements crisscrossing reserves very closely. You have roads crisscrossing or traversing very closely. Now, is this an inherent issue? Is there a solution to this? Because quite frankly, what could be done to resolve such an issue? You could fence, you could create temporary barriers, but with climate change happening, with animals forced to move out of their natural reserves to be able to get food and water, for people being forced to change their lifestyles, their cultivation practices, it's so much more deep-rooted. What's the way out?
The way out is first to accept that India has actually done very well in conservation and has an ethos which is deeply rooted in nature. And coexistence is the norm. When problems don't occur, we don't talk about it, we don't report it. The hundreds of thousands of interactions that take place between various what are potentially dangerous animals and people is happening as we speak. And we don't get excited about it. It is not a topic of debate. If you want to place it in scale, in appropriate context, do we even now consider the number of accidents that take place on road and the number of lives lost? Do we think of ever taking a car again? No, we just blindly get into a vehicle and drive. I think there is an attempt to sensationalize the whole thing. It's out of context. This is in no way to undermine the tragedy that individual people and families have faced. That is a real problem. But if you follow a development model...
Okay, Ravi Chellam, I have to ask you one question. Now, since you make that point, allow me to ask you this question to put things in context. For you to be able to, since you brought this whole issue of context, when we're looking at just, say, 22 to 23, 98 lives, according to the government, have been lost due to attacks by wild animals. Around 27 of them were due to attacks by elephants. Now, I'm not asking you anything isolating this case, but I'm trying, would you be able to help us put this in perspective? What's the larger context to this? What would you see these numbers? Is it, I mean, when an ordinary person looks at it, it is worrying. 98 deaths in a span of, say, 22 to 23 due to wild animal attacks does sound very big, but what's the larger context? Do you have a context for this?
We need to be careful about the language you use. First of all, to call these attacks is incorrect. You don't know the circumstances under which, I mean, if you have people crowding a wild animal, what do you expect it to do? right? I mean, we are.
Absolutely true. No, even if you're throwing firecrackers at them, absolutely.
So, so, so if you provoke an animal, what do you expect it to do? Often it is panicking. It is maybe even trying to run away, and you're on the way. So, all I'm saying is, don't focus on the fact that deaths are happening. Go to the deep-rooted reason, which is the model of development, which is to destroy nature so that your economy can grow. And there are costs to it. Air pollution, how many deaths they are causing? Millions of premature deaths due to air pollution. Do we even talk about it? Because it's a silent killer. It is not dramatic footage of a large mammal coming and crushing you or something like that. All I am
No, no,
saying
I
is,
don't think that's a fair comparison because a lot has been discussed and spoken about air pollution as well. But I get your point. You're trying to put it in context and see it in context of what the larger interactions have been. MG Radhakrishnan, would you want to respond to this, particularly as a person who has been seeing Kerala very closely to a point that Ravi Chellam has said right now? And many would say that you need to see it in the larger context. But how would you see this?
Well, I think, this is again, we are going into the kind of a binary system where, you know, uh, environmentalists are saying about, the cause of environment is the most important thing, and the farmers are on the other side. I think we should have a holistic solution where people should be protected from this because that has been growing like anything. It is absolutely all right to say about the environment, the need to protect wildlife and the environment, but at the same time, what you see in Wayanad is that the entire district is on a boil now. And as you said, Sneha, 98 persons have died in just 1 year. So what could be the reasons? Definitely, there are so many issues there. For instance, there is a discrepancy in the statistics. For instance, many would hold that the number of wild elephants has actually grown like anything in the last 5 to 6 years. But at the same time, suddenly there is a problem. According to one particular statistic, it has been growing steadily until last year. And suddenly, last year's statistics show the number has come down like anything. Now the issue is whether the number of wild elephants has grown beyond the carrying capacity of a forest like that we have in Wayanad. So nobody has done any serious comprehensive study about this, and that is where you need to bring in the advice or the kind of opinions that has been made by people like Madhav Gadgil, who's saying that you have to have a a more realistic approach, because now you cannot uh, you all you have is to give a radio collar to the elephant or try to do it sort of instead of that. What he's saying that there should be a culling if there is the number of elephants has actually grown beyond the carrying capacity of forests. And this particular area in Wayanad is a tri-junction of three forest areas of three different states of Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, and Kerala. So the Wayanad forest is it's a continuous. It's part of the entire larger forest area. So during the summers, these animals have been traveling across states, and especially in Kerala, where you have water compared to Karnataka forest and Tamil Nadu forest. You have better water resources and food. Fodder is also easily available. So these animals are coming down from the forest areas to people who have been living there. You This is a major issue. And now the
Right.
quality of forests has, Kerala is supposed to have about more than 35 to 36% of forest cover. But yet the quality of the forest that you're talking about has declined like anything. You have monoculture plantations, you have invasive plants
Absolutely.
like the senna and eucalyptus and acacia. These are completely altered the habitat and the natural diversity of the place, where habitats of animals have been destroyed. So instead of, the government has to have a completely, totally holistic master plan. And this in fact, Kerala government has actually prepared a master plan, but unfortunately, it has not yet been implemented. So there are a lot of problems, like, the forest laws are there, which the central
Okay.
government is actually controlling all those things. You have to have some kind of a common, coordinated approach in which all the three states, especially I'm
Okay,
talking about Kerala,
right,
but Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, and Kerala, governments and forest departments have to sit together with
right.
environmentalists and people representatives and find out a solution to this, which has not yet happened in spite of the fact that this has been
Okay.
increasing so dramatically in the last 1 decade. So this coordinated approach by three states is something that is very important
So,
uh,
right.
now.
MG Radhakrishnan, let me just get in Ravi Chellam again at this point. Ravi Chellam, to what MG Radhakrishnan is saying, and if you look at what Madhav Gadgil has said, he's a very well-respected scientist, environmentalist. He's well known. For him to come up with something like this, calling it, you need a more realistic approach, possibly speaks of a very strong shift in paradigm and approach that is being seen in Kerala or is likely to be seen. You've had instances where they have passed a resolution in the Kerala Assembly and they've asked for they've asked Centre to amend these wildlife laws. So if you're looking at this, do you see a change in how this is being handled? Is this expected? Is this concerning?
I think while I respect Professor Gadgil, I completely disagree with what he has proposed. I think while any life lost in such circumstances is a tragedy, the solution is not to kill animals. You talk to the local communities themselves. I mean, we had a case of one tusker being captured and taken to Tamil Nadu, and we had the local community protesting against that. So people have very unique cultural and strong links and relationships with wildlife, especially species like elephants, which are long-lived, which can be individually identified. Those are special relationships. So to suggest culling is not in the ethos of this country. We have a very complex, very complicated, and very long cultural relationship with our nature. And any attempt at changing that will have unforeseen consequences. And the success that we have done in terms of wildlife conservation, let's not forget, we are the largest human population, one of the densest human populations across the world. And look at what we have done in terms of conservation, the number of species we've protected so well. We are in many ways the envy of the world when it comes to this kind of coexistence model. Bulk of our, I mean, a significant part of our wildlife is not even within our wildlife sanctuaries. It's living with people, and people are living with that. So that's the model we need to really systematize, get that into official policy, give decentralized powers for decision making at the local level, rather than think of culling and things like that, which I don't think is appropriate at all.
All right. Okay. Let me just get in at this point, Ajay Suri. Ajay Suri, you know, there's one issue that India is facing, Kerala is facing, and that's the reducing forest cover. There's been a year-on-year decline in the forest cover. This has been documented by several watchdogs. Now, this is just one aspect to it. There is the other aspect to it, and that's climate change. And that, again, is only going to worsen the situation, impacting both the wildlife as well as the human beings. Does this really mean that we are heading possibly for even more challenging times than what it was? Because the face-offs between human and wildlife is likely to increase in more hostile environments, or is this being extremely alarmist?
Well, the answer lies in your question, Sneha. It's because our forest cover is decreasing and the wildlife is increasing paradoxically. That's the reason I feel why tigers are coming out of their protected turfs, and so many more man-animal conflicts are happening. I don't want to shift the focus away from your program, which is like 98 animal deaths, 98 human deaths on account of animals taking place in Kerala. But don't forget, one of the biggest flashpoints of man-animal conflicts is the Chandrapur district of Maharashtra, near the Tadoba Tiger Reserve, where in the last 1 year, more than 50 people have been killed by tigers, like one death a week by tigers alone. This is a very, very scary situation. But I really want to point at another thing. I want to have a somewhat different take on what Mr. Ravi Chellam has just said. I broadly agree with him. But at the same time, what the Kerala government's resolution is asking is a change in Section 11 of the Wildlife Protection Act, which, as of now, gives the power to kill or capture an errant wild animal, be it an elephant or a tiger or a leopard, with the chief wildlife warden. Now, what the Kerala government wants it that this power should be given to chief conservator of forests. Now, Kerala has 5 CCFs. Now, if this power is given to them, then I'm afraid that a lot more innocent animals will get killed, because all these CCFs, they'll have to face they'll have to face the anger of the people directly, rather than and secondly, the chief wildlife warden, he is expected to take a deliberate, considered decision. This may not be possible with CCFs. So I think this will not be a good move at all. That's what I feel about it. And coming back to your original question, yes, the animals are increasing, but the forest cover is decreasing, and this is a real big cause of worry. And secondly, what we are really lacking, the country is really lacking, is the animal corridors. We speak a lot about the need to build tiger corridors, but then I've seen there is also a need to build elephant corridors. For instance, in places like Corbett and Rajaji National Park in Uttarakhand, which are like situated side by side, the animal corridors, which used to be several kilometers wide, have now, just been reduced to just 400, 500 meters outside of Kotdwar. And the same thing, I'm told, is happening in lots of other
Suri, allow me to interrupt you. There's a breaking news coming in, and please stay on with us, because we are taking this breaking news at this point because it's very much in context of what we are discussing right now. The National Green Tribunal has dismissed a plea on the threat to the survival of elephants because of conflicts with humans that was observed, and has observed that the Wildlife Act of 1972 is beyond its purview. The tribunal was hearing a petition seeking the centre's intervention in the loss of elephant habitats and for re-establishment of elephant corridors. M.G. Radhakrishnan, what would this really translate into? Of course, you have the Union Minister coming in tomorrow to Kerala. You've had Pinarayi Vijayan. You've had the Forest Minister, Sasindran. All of them holding high-level meetings. There's a resolution in the Assembly that has been passed. Now, with this development, M.G. Radhakrishnan, how do you look at things?
Like, what Madhav Gadgil has said is very important, that, if you are not coming out to protect those those human beings who are, in the receiving end now, the entire population are likely to turn against the cause of environment and forests. So it is important that instead of taking an elitist view about the need to protect environment at the cost of human lives, is actually making things difficult even to the environment protection in the country. So I think now, if it is decided that we should have a relook into this, forest, this Wildlife Act 1972. I think this is high time that we try to do that. I think the latest Green Tribunal decision, I'm not quite, I have not yet got the entire, picture about the new decision, so I can't comment on that. But the point is that, instead of carving these things in stone, we will have to take. That's why Madhav Gadgil is saying, and he has given the examples of Scandinavian countries, which are, supposed to be the best in terms of environment protection, where this kind of, the culling and protecting human lives against, wildlife attacks are taken quite seriously. So I think we are now again caught in kind of a silos, one for the environment lobby and the other the farmers, or the kind of the other section. But I think this is the time.
All right.
Now we have to put our heads together. and try to give a complete relook. Now, the forest cover is not as Kerala has highest forest cover in the country, 32, 35, 36%. The problem is that the quality of forest cover has gone down like anything. As I said before, the invasive forest and monoculture
Okay.
plantations and the other thing. So instead of that,
MG
the kind of
Radhakrishnan,
a
again, I'm really sorry. I'll have to stop you at this point because there seems to be again a network issue, and we're trying to restore that issue. Hopefully, we'll be able to restore that. But last question right now, if I could just go over to Mr. Chellam, how do you see? I mean, the centre's plea being rejected by the NGT, saying the 1972 Act is beyond its purview, but could this possibly be also attempts towards changes that may come about in the 1972 law? Would that be something that may have to be watched out for very closely? Could there be cautionary moves in this?
Well, the NGT's uh, purview is clearly restricted by the NGT Act, and the Wildlife Protection Act is not under the NGT. So the NGT is correct in saying that it cannot pass any judgment which is rooted in the Wildlife Protection Act. The Wildlife Protection Act, as you know, has been only recently amended 1 or 2 years ago. So environmental forest laws are being amended. So if the government really wants to amend it, it would amend it. It depends on what the nature of the amendment is. I think there are gaps and flaws in the recently amended Wildlife Protection Act. And as I said, giving decentralized decision making at the local level is always good. It needs to come with certain safeguards. And one size fits all is always going to be a problem. What is good in an elephant habitat need not be necessarily good in a snow leopard habitat. So to try and build in more flexibility, faster decision making, always keeping local people's security and welfare in mind without necessarily sacrificing on wildlife interests. That's the way to go.
Right. Thank you very much, all three of you, for joining us. We're totally out of time. Thank you for adding perspective and understanding on this issue, which is extremely sensitive, extremely emotive, but something that requires urgency in being tackled. It's been actually a long drawn call for decades now, something that needs to be sorted out as soon as one can. It's time for a short break. On the other side, do join us with all the updates.